Good evening. I will call to order the semi-monthly meeting of the State of Rhode Island Coastal Resources Management Council to order. Today is Tuesday, September 27, 2022. I would ask that the record reflect those council members and staff members that are present. I would then ask for an approval of the minutes of the previous meeting that have been disseminated from Lisa. That meeting with minutes that we're approving is Tuesday, August 23, 2022. The motion.
So moved.
Motion been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I will poll the council. Mr. Izzy. Aye. Ms. Hall.
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds.
Aye.
Mr. Sahajian.
Yes.
Ms. McGovern.
Yes.
Mr. Gomez.
Aye.
I too vote aye. So the minutes from August 23 are approved. Subcommittee reports.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have one subcommittee report, and that is from the Planning and Procedures Subcommittee. Planning and Procedures met last week on September 20th to discuss a staff project to develop an administrative fine program and penalty matrix to go along with that. After much discussion at the subcommittee level, the subcommittee voted to begin rulemaking on that, and we will begin rulemaking on your tonight.
Which one do we do? Currents.
Just authorize staff to go forward with the.
Right now we do that, right?
Yes,
All right, any questions of Jeff on that? If not, I would entertain a motion then to allow him to go forward as indicated.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Izzy. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Reynolds. I'll now poll the council. Mr. Izzy.
Aye.
Ms. Hall.
Aye.
Ms. Reynolds.
Aye.
Mr. Sahajian.
Aye.
Ms. McGovern.
Aye.
Mr. Gomez.
Aye.
I too, Raymond Coy, vote aye. They have approval for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other staff report? Subcommittee report?
No other subcommittee reports.
All right, staff reports.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have a couple items to alert the council to. First off, as per usual, just to let the council know, wind farm activities are constant. We have 4 active offshore wind farms under review by staff right now, with CRMC decision dates between the end of this calendar year and fairly regularly thereafter until about June, early July of next year. So staff will be busy looking at some of these federal consistency reviews for the offshore wind projects. One of them, the Revolution Project, is bringing their export cable into state waters up Narragansett Bay, making landfall at Quonset. That application, which is under a Category B application review, will be in front of the council later in October, early in November, to begin hearings. If it needs more than one hearing, then we'll just continue the matter to another meeting. But that'll be in front of you for its state review within the next month, plus or minus. What staff is also doing on the wind farm front, really the offshore wind matter, is we have partnered with 8 other East Coast states that are also looking at offshore wind in federal waters and how those offshore wind projects work or not within their coastal zone management programs. One of the largest issues with offshore wind is the impact to existing users and uses in federal waters when a state's coastal program has review authority over those activities in federal waters. That usually is results in some sort of mitigation of those wind farms, as well as potentially compensation to the impact of the users groups, primarily commercial fishing, recreational fishing, charter fleets, if you will. So we have partnered with 8 other states from Maine down to the Carolinas to work with the Bureau of Ocean and Energy Management, BOEM, as well as NOAA, to try to come up with some sort of federal level methodology and guidance document that looks at mitigation as a whole, that looks at compensation as a whole, so that each individual state doesn't have to address, especially the compensation issues associated with some of these projects. As you can imagine, a lot of these offshore wind projects will will negotiate with one state on similar issues differently as they negotiate with another. And that's just not fair to the users in the industry as well as the states trying to manage these things. So we're trying to get more consistent view on a federal level with these other 8 states, and that's progressing actually fairly well. Boehm is a willing partner, and as is NOAA. So we're getting a lot of help on the federal level too. Then lastly, I just want to, 2 more things, sorry. One of which is that we have partnered with Rhode Island Saltwater Anglers Association and the University of Rhode Island to look at recreational fishing in state waters, primarily in Narragansett Bay. One of the things we've learned from a couple of the offshore wind projects that we've been reviewing for a couple of years is that while we all know recreational fishing occurs and we all have our favorite spots, we don't really know to what degree it might occur in certain areas of the bay. It could be heavily fished over here and not heavily fished over there. Yet when a CRMC application comes in for review, an inshore one, we sometimes find that recreational fishing all of a sudden becomes a huge issue, but it's always anecdotal. So we're trying to partner with the Saltwater Anglers Association and URI to have it be less anecdotal and more objective. And that's a project that's just begun. And I'll have more information on that as the project moves forward. And then lastly, I had sent an email out to you all earlier today asking you to hopefully adjust your schedules for the next couple of meetings. And this is because of me, and I will not be available. I'll be out of state on October 25th, which is a regularly scheduled meeting of the council. And I would like to be at that meeting of the council when it hears applications. So I've asked you all if we can move the October 25th meeting to November 1st. If we can move the November 8th meeting, which falls on election day, to the next night, which is November 9th, and then keep the regularly scheduled November 22nd meeting. So just want to get that out there in case you haven't had a chance to look at your emails. Thank you.
Jeff? Any questions of Jeff on anything that he presented?
Just a comment on the recreational fishing, that really kind of follows where the fish are, so it covers a big area unless you're looking at I mean, we had giant bluefin in the Savannah River for a week or so, and they were catching them.
And that information is actually needed in an application perspective. While someone might come and say, I fish for bluefin tuna here all year round. If we know it only occurs during 1 week of the year, it's just useful in our review.
Well, I know what they're doing in Sapullet, so.
Okay. But that's the point of it, is to have a better handle on what fishing occurs on a temporal basis, as well as we don't want to, we're not looking for anybody's secret fishing spot. Put it that way.
Oh, I don't know, the lobstermen and the commercial fishermen are very tough to give up their spots, right?
Yes, Mr.
Yeah, that's good, thank you.
Jeff, I think we should solidify those meeting dates. On November 9th, I have a 5 o'clock Zoom. It will take about an hour. So if you have a quorum, I'll be 15 minutes late. If you do not, I'll be here at 6:15.
At the chair's pleasure, we can always start a meeting a few minutes late anyway.
If you have a quorum, begin.
Okay, thank you.
Next matter is legal counsel report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to be brief. There is a Superior Court case that is currently pending. It's the Dumplings Association, Inc. versus Coastal Resources Management Council and the Jamestown SHM Jamestown Boatyard LLC. CA number PC 2021-00296. Judge Cruz of the Superior Court has entered an order remanding this matter for a written decision from the April 13th, 2021 council meeting. So what I'd like to do today is to get your permission to draft a decision from that meeting based upon the transcript, which we all have, which I have, it's part of the record, and have it forwarded to the council at an upcoming meeting so that you can vote on it, approve it, so it can be sent to the court and also entered into the record down here. What we will need to do for those members that did not participate at that April 13th, 2021 meeting is to supply them with the necessary transcripts so that they can read it and familiarize themselves with it. We'll get a statement from them ahead of time, which is standard practice in matters of this nature for administrative hearings, and then have them go ahead and vote on it.
You need a motion to allow you to do, you said you were seeking.
I
permission.
would prefer it. I don't think it's completely necessary, but based on the fact that in this case, just about everything that the council does ends up in some type of a motion in court, I'd recommend it.
With that said, then I entertain a motion to authorize our council to draft that decision.
So move.
Motion made by Mr. Gomez. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Izzy, and I'll pull the council, Mr.
Question.
Sure.
So when the new members read the transcripts and then vote, what exactly would they be voting on?
Well,
Would you get something in writing ahead of time?
Well, here's the thing. The council heard this matter in December of 2020. And they took a vote. Part of that vote was that the decision would be forwarded to the council. They would see the written decision and they would vote on it. And subsequent to that, the decision was drafted and it was signed by the executive director on December 31st, 2020. Later on in April, because of the language that was in the original motion, that decision was forwarded to the council and it was approved. And since that time, the Dumplings, their contention was that this is something that should be added to the record. And even though it's the same decision, and that there should be some type of a decision from that hearing, which the coastal objected to.
A written decision.
Yes.
So what is it that we would be voting on as new members of the council?
Well, you're going to take a look at the transcript from April 13th. Then you're going to take a look at the decision
And conform it?
and see if it conforms. You know, I have to tell you that a lot of legal hours, not only for the agency, but also for the parties involved, have been spent on this issue. I think Judge Cruz's decision was correct, just to get it off the dime so that he could move forward to the merits of the case.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? So we have a motion that was made and seconded. I'll now poll the council. Mr. Izzy. Aye. Ms. Hall.
Aye.
Ms. Reynolds.
Aye.
Mr. Sajan.
Aye.
Ms. McGovern.
Aye.
Mr. Gomez.
Aye.
I too, Raymond Foyer, vote aye. Anything else? Tony?
Nope, that's it.
All right. Brings us to our applications before us. First matter is an application requesting a fourth extension before the full council. It is number A with an asterisk 2016-01-005. The Westport One Trust. The fourth extension requests to construct and maintain a residential boating facility located at plat 304, lot 164, Main Road, Tiverton, Rhode Island. Is there any party present here this evening as it relates to that application?
Yes, sir.
And your name, please?
Stephen Surzan, I'm the manager of the Westport Trust.
Okay, why don't you come forward, sir? And
Yep. Like right here.
yes, please.
Okay. Do you want me to stand or sit?
Well, you can sit right now.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. And I know Laura Miguel has this for our council and you're ready to report, correct?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All fourth extensions of Ascents require a compliance inspection. So on August 5th, I conducted a compliance inspection of this site, found that no work had been initiated. There haven't been any substantive changes to the site conditions or the regulations that would call this asset into question. So I found no reason not to extend the asset for one more year.
Okay. And the reason that it's before us is because it's a fourth extension is one of the reasons, correct? And not because there was anything wrong or procedure, right? Okay. Any questions of Ms. McGowan?
You want me to make a statement? Or are you all
I
set?
don't think you need to.
Okay, well, then we'll leave it. That's maybe the best thing to do.
Could you just spell your last name?
Serzan. Stephen is Phen.
Oh, all right. So we have before us a recommendation or of no objection, if you will, from Laura, who's viewed the property and the file on behalf of the council. And it's before us because it's the fourth extension. So with that, I entertain a motion on behalf of the council to grant this fourth extension, if you see fit.
Mr. Chair, one question.
Yep.
Are we gonna be here in another year? No.
Mr. Willis says,
Mr. Sajan, no, this would be the last. The management procedures allow for an application to be extended in one-year intervals. The executive director can do that for 3 times. If an applicant needs a 4th extension, it has to be done here, and the council can grant the 1-year extension, but that would be it.
Does the applicant understand that?
Yep, and I've made a decision. I'm going to sell the property. So this would be the last one. I understand it's fourth and final.
Based on Ms. Miguel's recommendation, I move approval of the extension for 1 year.
motion been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Sajan, seconded by Ms. McGovern. I'll now pull the council. Mr. Izzy. Aye. Ms. Hall.
Aye.
Mrs. Reynolds.
Aye.
Mr. Sajan.
Aye.
Ms. McGovern.
Aye.
Mr. Gomez.
Aye.
I too, Raymond Coyer, vote aye. So the approval is unanimous.
It's close. Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
you're all set. Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Next matter is to review and action of the Rights of Way Subcommittee recommendation for the designation of Portsmouth right of ways. And our counsel, Attorney DeSisto, is going to deal with this. Are you gonna do them one at a time? Do you need me to read them into the record or?
I would recommend that they do one at a time and be read into the record, and then I'll explain each one.
All right.
And I do know that we have the chair of the Portsmouth Harbor Commission here.
And I'm also head of the rights of way. I'm also head of the rights of way for the town of Portsmouth.
As well as the head of the Rights of Way Committee down there in Portsmouth, and he's much more familiar with these than I, if you need, if anybody has any questions.
All right. So the first one is 2021-03-046 Beach Street at Cedar Avenue. Approximately 6-foot wide path that leads from Beach Street at Cedar Avenue to the water's edge, dividing lot S33 and 34 of Plat 21. Attorney DeSisto.
Yes, this was the first one that was recommended by the town of Portsmouth in this matter, and I know you all have the report in front of you. But this is a 20-foot right of way. The deeds on the both sides of the right of way indicate that it is in fact a right of way. And it's labeled as such in the town's tax assessor's map. And I am told that was from the testimony and also from the town that the public has used this on a regular basis for quite some time. Excuse me.
Anything further?
Mr. Chair.
This is a 6-foot right of way. I think you said 23.
I beg your pardon, yes. This is Cedar Avenue.
Yeah. No, Beach Street and Cedar Avenue.
Really? Sorry about that. I beg your pardon, I'd already jumped ahead. Yes, this is a 6-foot way.
Mr. Sahajian, you had a question?
Not a question. I wanted to make a motion.
Oh.
I move that we adopt the right of the subcommittee's findings of fact.
I don't think you need to, but you can if you want.
You want to do them all at once?
No, I'm just asking council something. What do you think?
You can ask, yes.
All right, is there anyone present this evening that wishes
Excuse me.
in favor or in opposition of this particular one?
I'm Wenley Ferguson with Save the Bay.
I'm sorry, I need your name.
Wenley Ferguson with Save the Bay. And Save the Bay would like to support the formal designation of all of these right of ways. So you don't have to speak for each one. So, and thank you for the work that it's taken from the county and CMC to move forward with this designation process.
Thank you. Mrs. Sahajian, you had a motion.
I move that we adopt the findings of fact by the subcommittee, and that we adopt their recommendation to accept it as a right of way.
Motion was made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Sahajian, seconded by Ms. Reynolds. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll poll the council. Mr. Izzy?
Aye.
Ms. Hall?
Aye.
Ms. Reynolds?
Aye.
Mrs. Sahajian?
Aye.
Ms. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
I too, Raymond Coy, vote aye. Next one is 2021-03-048 Cedar Avenue. Approximately a 20-foot wide path that leads from Cedar Avenue to the water's edge, dividing lots 47 and 48 of plat 21.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an interesting one because there was CRMC signage on display at Cedar Avenue. But research by both the town and by the agency indicated that it had never been formally designated. It meets the criteria. The title had been searched. It's been used by the town, public for many years. And that's why the recommendation from the subcommittee was to also designate this right of way as a public right of way to the shore, to the coastal waters of the state of Rhode Island.
Any questions of Tony from council members? Anyone prepared for a motion on this one?
I'll make a motion to approve the findings of fact made by the subcommittee and presented by Attorney DeSisto, and to approve the Cedar Avenue rights of way.
So motion made by Ms. Hall and seconded by Mr. Sahajian. I'll now poll the council. Mr. Izzy? Aye. Ms. Hall?
Aye.
Ms. Reynolds?
Aye.
Mr. Sahajian? Ms. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
I too, Raymond Coy, vote aye. Next matter is 2021-03-050 Fountain Avenue. Approximately 30-foot wide path that leads from Fountain Avenue to the water's edge, dividing lots 168 and 169 of plat 21. Attorney DeSisto.
Fountain Avenue is similar to Cedar. There was a sign designating Fountain Avenue as a CRMC right of way. Once again, research by the town as well as the agency indicated that it had never been formally designated. This is a town right of way in any event. It's owned by the town of Portsmouth. It's been used by the public for many, many years as a right of way to the shore. Falls in the same category as the last one. That's why the subcommittee recommended that it be approved as a public right of way.
Any questions of Attorney DeSisto? Anyone prepared to make a motion?
I'd like to adopt the findings of fact as presented by the attorney and the subcommittee and approve the designation of Fountain Avenue as a right of way.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made by Ms. Reynolds, seconded by Ms. McGovern. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll now poll the council. Mr. Izzy? Aye. Ms. Hall?
Aye.
Ms. Reynolds?
Aye.
Mr. Sahajian?
Aye.
Okay, I'm sorry. Ms. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
I too, Raymond Coy, vote aye. Next matter is 2021-03-051 East Power Street. Paved street bordered by plat 31, lot 54, plat 34, lot 56, and plat 31, lot 53, and leading to the water's edge. Attorney DeSisto, please.
Well, this is an interesting one, assuming that you've dedicated your life to being a title attorney. But East Power Street runs from Power Street to the Secundit River. And the deeds, particularly for the abutting properties, and there's 3 of them, all indicate that it is bounded by East Power Street, so-called. I am convinced after reviewing the title that East Power Street is in fact a public right of way of the town of Portsmouth, as well as the fact that it's been used by the public for many years for the traveling. And we have Madam Chair now.
The town of Portsmouth and the Harbor Commission is concerned about East Power Street. Not that we don't want it to be a public right of way, but the parking situation there because of the neglect of the road that leads to the water for the right of way has deteriorated very, very poorly. So people are now parking on the street willy-nilly anywhere they can get to. And it's our concern that we would hope that if this is brought into a CRMC right of way, that we could make sure that that road is repaired because it's not safe.
May I answer?
Absolutely.
This designation recognizes the legal status of East Power Street.
Mhm.
But the care and control rests with the town of Portsmouth. Regulation also.
Okay,
So you have a free hand at the town level to handle any safety issues. And in fact, it's appropriate that you do so. If your solicitor needs a letter from me to that effect, I'd be happy to do so, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
okay, thank you very much. That was what my question was that
Yes.
who was responsible for repairing the road so that we can make it parking safely?
It's a common misconception. By statute, what the CRMC does is designate public rights of way to the shore. That's their job to do, to designate them.
Okay,
But because this is actually owned by the town of Portsmouth, and it is a street, so-called, they still have regulatory powers over it, as they would any street in the town.
Can I just get your name for the record?
yes, Abigail Brown.
No, she's just asking questions.
Okay,
Okay, thank you for that one.
thank you.
I'm gonna sit down, and wait for the next one.
Ed, on this particular one.
We'll adopt the supplement's findings of fact in recognize East Power. That's a public right away.
Is there a second? Okay, motion's been made by Mr. Sahajian, currently seconded by Ms. Reynolds and Ms. McGovern. Any discussion? I will now call the council. Mr. Izzi.
Aye.
Ms. Hall.
Aye.
Ms. Reynolds.
Aye.
Mr. Sahajian.
Aye.
Ms. McGovern.
Aye.
Mr. Gomez.
Aye.
I too, Raymond Coyer, vote aye. Next matter is 2021-03-073 Corey's Lane. Approximately 12-foot wide paved asphalt path that leads from Corey's Lane to the water's edge, dividing 32/1/A and 32/1/B. Attorney DeSisto, please.
Well, this is a very scenic and picturesque area of the town of Portsmouth. Corey's Lane, which is a public street for the town of Portsmouth, separates the Preservation Society of Newport property from that of Portsmouth Abbey. And there were issues that were raised on this particular parcel, not that it was contrary to it being designated as a public right of way. It is, but apparently there's railroad tracks at the end. There was some concerns about safety because people ride track bicycles back and forth. So there was a question as to how that would work from a safety standpoint. The Portsmouth Abbey raised some questions as to the dimensions of Corey Lanes, which I think we've satisfied their concerns, and I don't see anybody from the Portsmouth Abbey here tonight. It's clear that this is a public right of way to the shore, and that people do in fact use it. But to the point from the last one, this is something that needs some safety measures.
My concern only is who's responsible and do we have to ask permission from CRMC to get the trainsicles to put up signs, because it is a public road and the tracks go right through the entrance to the right of way. I don't know who's going to be held responsible, whether it's us. who
Town of
is-
Portsmouth.
again, we're with the.
Correct.
Portsmouth.
I'll incorporate that into my letter to your solicitor.
That would be very helpful. Thank you very much. Okay, that was all I had a question about, so we're good. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
So welcome. Yes, sir.
I'm curious about that last decision because,
Could you identify yourself for the?
I'm sorry, this is Tom Grieve. I'm on the Harbor Commission as well, on the Rights of Way Committee.
Last name?
Grieve, Grieb.
Thank you.
The tracks are RIDOT owned and operated. They are responsible on other roads in town for putting in the crossing, things and so forth. It would seem to me that RIDOT would be responsible, not Portsmouth, for putting in whatever safety measures they think is likely. These rail bicycles are really sidecars like you used to see, like this. Now they're just pedal operated. They go, I'm going to say, at least 15 miles an hour. They're very, they glide along the tracks, don't make a lot of noise. There is brush on both sides of where we are. And the company that does this has about 50 of them. They go up, they come back. They're not hooked together in any way. So the timing of when they go through is random. And there'll be some 200 crossings on any day on a weekend, 50 up, 50 down, 50 up, 50 down. So it does become, I believe, a real safety problem. And I don't think Portsmouth is the right spot to solve that problem. I think it's RIDOT.
Well, this is what I'm gonna do.
Okay.
And before it's all over, we're gonna have more lawyers involved in this and people actually using the right of way. I'm gonna copy RIDOT's legal counsel on my communication and alert them to the fact that the Portsmouth Harbor Commission is concerned about liability issues and that it's their opinion that RIDOT should be handling the matter.
And I'll give you the solution I think is right. On other roads, there's a flagman that stands there to start looking down the tracks, stops any pedestrian or vehicle traffic. I think that would work. But the company that has these cars needs to be told to have that.
Okay, that's a RIDOT issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions of Attorney DeSisto from the council? Is the council ready to make a motion on this particular one?
Motion.
Ms. McGovern has made a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second,
Ms. Hall?
yes.
Okay, second by Ms. Hall. The motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, I will call the council. Mr. Izzy?
Aye.
Ms. Hall?
Aye.
Ms. Reynolds?
Aye.
Mr. Sahajian? Ms. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
I too, Raymond Coyer, vote aye. Approves as well. So collectively, they have all been approved.
Thank you. And we should mention the fine work that the town of Portsmouth, particularly the Harbor Commission, the Right of Way Commission did on this matter. It was a pleasure working with them.
Thank you.
It was, thank you. Next matter is applications which have been or had public notice and are before the full council for decision. We have one, it's 2021-08-102, Bristol County Water Authority to remove the lower Kickamuit Reservoir Dam and for the restoration of the upper Kickamuit Estuary located at plat 13B, lots 28, plat 21, lots 182 in Warren, Rhode Island. And if parties representing the applicant or the applicant themselves can come forward, please.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Keogh. I represent the Bristol County Water Authority. And with me is Bristol County Water Authority's Chief Executive Director and Chief Engineer. And we have representatives from PAR Engineering as well to answer any questions that that the council may have tonight.
Mr. Keogh, who will be speaking? We'll swear them in.
Sure. Why don't we have, I guess it's going to depend on if you have questions. Why don't we swear them all in just to
Yes,
be efficient?
yes.
Start with Mr. Kutu.
Can we do it all at once?
Sure. That's even better.
All right, please raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Well, I do.
Okay, starting from closest to Mr. Keough, please state your name and spell it for the record.
My name is Matthew Belisle, B-E-L-L-I-S as in Samuel, L-E.
My name is Stephen B.H. Kutu, C-O-U-T-U.
Seaver Anderson, that's S-E-A-V-E-R-A-N-D-E-R-S-O-N. Yep, Brian Dutra, B-R-I-A-N-D-U-T-R. Matthew Dunn, M-A-T-T-G-W-D-U-N-N.
All right, thank you. You can be seated. And before presentation, I will ask Amy Silva on behalf of the council to report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
The application before you tonight is a request for approval to remove the lower Kickamuit Reservoir Dam located in Warren, Rhode Island. This is part of a larger project to remove both the lower and the upper Kickamuit Reservoir dams. The upper Kickamuit Reservoir Dam is entirely within DEM freshwater wetland jurisdiction. It is being handled through DEM freshwater wetlands. The lower Kickamuit Reservoir Dam is within CRMC's freshwater wetland jurisdiction and also falls within 200 feet of a coastal feature. So the lower Kickamuit Dam is with the CRMC for review. The area between the two dams was formerly a drinking water reservoir, which is why it is owned by the Bristol County Water Authority. The two dams on either end are in significant disrepair. It is no longer used for drinking water. And in fact, the lower Kickamuit Dam is periodically breached by salt water from coastal waters on the southern side. As part of the removal of the lower dam, a formal application to alter under the freshwater wetlands program was submitted in conjunction with the Red Book Category B special exception application. Both of the regulations apply. One application addressing all relevant sections was submitted. As part of the removal, there will be dredging to remove both of the abutments and open up the area in the immediate vicinity of the lower dam, and also to dredge a channel essentially where the original river was back in the 1800s before the reservoir was created. The applicants are still currently working with the Army Corps of Engineers and Fish and Wildlife on the dredge window. They're asking for some extensions on the dredge window. CRMC defers to the Army Corps for dredge window stuff, and we will reflect that in our assent. During the course of public notice, several objections were received. The substance of the objections were primarily related to concerns about flooding, inundation of nearby roads, potential saltwater intrusion with the removal of that lower dam barrier, saltwater intrusion into local drinking water wells. Concern about whether or not FEMA flood zones would be forced to change with the removal of that barrier, and concerns about habitat and fishing impacts, both with the removal of the dam and potential sedimentation occurring during the project itself and afterwards when there is more flow, more salt water moving up the Kickamuit River. This is the culmination of many years of work and public hearing and public input. The applicant held meetings with the town, they held meetings with concerned citizens, residents of a nearby condominium complex. They addressed pretty much all of the concerns in their application. Staff feels that they have all been addressed sufficiently. There are no staff objections to the approval of this application to remove the River Dam. And there are a few staff suggested stipulations at the end of the staff report. It is my understanding that the applicant is aware of them and agrees to them. Thank you.
Any questions of Amy from our council?
Mr. Chair, I have one.
Sure, Mrs. Sajan.
Out of an abundance of caution, can you just go over the special exception criteria?
Yes, I don't have the, I don't know if we outlined them all.
Maybe I'll rephrase it. Just maybe you can
Yeah, so,
share how you feel that
yes,
the application meets the criteria.
absolutely. The crux of the special exception criteria, I got it right here, is that it meets the goals and policies of the Red Book. And the ones that we have specifically highlighted in our report are that all reasonable steps have been taken to minimize environmental impacts and or use conflicts. No reasonable alternative means of or location for serving a compelling public purpose cited. And that the proposed activity serves a compelling compelling public purpose, which provides benefits to the public as a whole, as opposed to individual and private interests.
Thank you. In your professional opinion, you feel that the applicant met this burden?
Yes.
I just have a quick question on the difference between the lower and the upper, and maybe you mentioned it, CRMC would, obviously, we're talking just lower, and DEM is the overall lead on the total project,
Nope, just the upper.
just the upper. And the rationale, is it something to do with the
It's where the
district?
jurisdictional lines were drawn
Okay,
for the
okay.
wetlands delineations.
Yeah.
DEM freshwater wetlands is handling the upper dam removal. CRMC freshwater wetlands is handling the lower
Yeah.
with the overlap of Red Book. DEM water quality did not bifurcate the projects. They're reviewing both of them as one. Because DEM water quality is one agency, there was no need to split them.
Yeah, I was curious on that we weren't involved with both of them, that's all.
It was a jurisdictional thing.
Yeah, and I guess all right, no more, thank you. I understand now.
I have a question.
Yes, Ms. Wall.
On that bifurcation, is there a chance that the result of the freshwater wetland application on the upper dam will require a revisit of the assent if it's granted now in advance of that? Because I am imagining with just, you know, the way that water quality cert is thinking about it as one, it certainly does all connect hydrologically, environmentally, in terms of conditions at the site relative to all of the issues that you raised. Would that have to come back in for a revision or a new look or a new application, depending on what's decided upstream?
That is a possibility, but it is my understanding, speaking with staff at Water Quality and DEM freshwater wetlands, that they're primarily just working out some of the finer details, and there will not be substantive change to what is going on. There's always that possibility, I guess, but it's my understanding that that's not anticipated.
Okay,
The applicants might be better to answer that as well.
I guess it depends.
It does depend.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions of Amy from the council? Before I ask the applicant, just procedural, I just want to get a quick vote. Is there anyone that's going to speak in opposition of this at some point? Okay. All right, Attorney Keo.
Good evening, thank you. This application, there's an extensive evidentiary submission in support of this application. And I note, I would echo that staff has prepared a written report from the council, which endorses the program. One of the things in the staff report, it notes 2 letters of support that were specifically supplied with this application. But I just wanted to make the council aware, because it's a bit unusual that so many agencies support the removal of this dam, and I have the letters for you if you'd like them. Those two, but we have additional ones, and I'm not sure why they weren't put into why we didn't submit them to the package. It looks like it was an oversight on our part. But we have letters of support from the Warren Land Conservation Trust, the Rhode Island Shell Fishermen's Association, Inc., the Atlantic Coastal Fish Habitat Partnership, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, National Marine Fisheries Service, the Warren, I already said the Warren Land, the Town of Warren, and DOT, and the Warren Conservation Commission. So we have numerous agencies and bodies supporting this project. And Ms. Silva was correct. There are, she termed several letters of objection, but as noted in the staff report, there are really two letters of objection. They're form letters, and they're repeated over and over again. And the evidence in the record and the submissions by PAR refute a lot of the complaints that I would say would come from the abutters, and certainly the issues regarding fisheries have been rebutted in the evidence presented as well. So I understand those objections, but the question is, is there any evidence to support those? I note that in the original public notice, any objectors were asked to review the application and plans thoroughly, visit the proposed work if necessary, familiarize themselves with the conditions, and cite what law or laws, if any, in their opinion, would be violated by the work proposed. And in those two form letters, there is no citation to any law or regulation that would be violated in this project. So I would submit to the council that the overwhelming evidence before the council in this application supports approval of this application. And as I said, we have Mr. Kutu, the BCWA's executive director, and folks from PAR who prepared the application and the supporting documentation here to answer any questions you have.
Any questions of council members at this time of the attorney and or his witnesses? I think what we'll do is allow the objector to speak, then allow you an opportunity, if you need to call on your experts to rebut or address that.
Thank you.
Rather than just have them, present. How about that?
No, it wasn't, but there are people who wanted to speak like through Zoom.
There.
You're not there? No? Okay.
All right, well, we'll let the gentleman that's in the audience come forward first.
Would you gentlemen mind stepping back so he can get to the table?
Good evening.
My name is Robert Vitello. I'm a resident in Warren, Rhode Island, represent the Kickapoo Community Association, associated with the Waterview Condominium Complex with 225 residents, as well as all of the residents along Serpentine Road, which abut the western bank of the reservoir. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to finally speak in an open forum. What I would like to do is get on the springboard of the closing of the last is, it's interesting to note that counsel for the Bristol County Water Authority identified that there was a form letter associated to these objections. He's absolutely right. The reason why is because only 3 people along the entire Serpentine Road community received any notice at this of the CRMC application. So therefore, as a means of good citizenship, we went out to those people to make them aware and gave them the option to sign. I also note that those dozen or so people along Serpentine Road who were those objecting abutters who wanted to be participated in this meeting are not on the invite list. So thank you very much for that opportunity to close that out. Finally, in terms of the letters of recommendation, i.e. Say the Rhode Island Shell Fishermen's Association. I, as a former commercial diver and shell fisherman, yeah, I am very familiar with him and who they are. They are Warwick, they are West Bay. And he hasn't been an active shell fisherman for a long time. What I do know is that the shell fishermen in the East Bay, Bristol, Warren community, Andrade's Catch, they all oppose this. The pollution that will be coming from upstream into the Mount Hope Bay, once that southern dam is released, that area of Mount Hope Bay is, as you already know, is already a significant environmental challenge for repeated closures due to pollution. The septic systems and cesspools up in Smoke Rise Circle, right up the road, will introduce a consistent and non-ending pollutants into the Mount Hope Bay. So what I would like to do here is not so much argue or debate the issues that we'll never see eye to eye on. Ultimately, what our attempt was when we engaged with our council, Mr. Capizzo, was a means to collaborate with the Bristol County Water Authority to work to an amicable solution. That hasn't happened despite numerous attempts for open dialogue and communication. They cut us out when we wanted to address these concerns. So the issue at hand that we are facing is, in my opinion, based on the relevant research of the DEM rules and regulations for dam safety, the open records request and research that we've pulled from the state, as well as physical and visible observations, is that there has been a long-term, repeated, unethical, and in some instances, in my personal opinion, illegal actions that have taken place that have led us to this point. Mainly being that the Southern Dam, Dam 479, has largely been overlooked on this entire process. And much of the magnetism they've been trying to direct towards the Northern Dam, which is an earthen embankment. But the problem is that the Southern Dam has been in a state of critical failure since 2006, when they first received their significant upgrade. But interesting enough, when a dam, per Rhode Island law, Dam Safety Rules Act, once a dam receives a significant rating, that clicks in a time of every 5 years an inspection should be done. But when a RAG analysis was conducted based on the administrative oversight of that dam, all of a sudden inspections ceased. Instead of increasing, they just disappeared. So it's interesting to know. So there's no records of dam inspection, okay? And then in 2011, there's a notice of violation for the Northern Dam. So in a period of a dozen or so years, the DEM is just as complicit, if not more so. They should be held to a higher standard as the Bristol County Water Authority. The presentations that the Bristol County Water Authority has engaged on over the past couple of years to gain popular support amongst the community as if they're stewards of the environment is resting on low morals, because the fact of the matter is, during their presentations, they were saying that the dam is no longer of its use because due to tidal surge and climate change, saltwater intrusion is coming over the top of the dam. Well, that is true, but it's not because of climate change. The fact is, and we have photos to prove it, and emailed evidence from the DEM in communication with the Bristol County Water Authority, is that the Bristol County Water Authority intentionally cut 2 feet of the dam, which then permitted saltwater intrusion into the freshwater environment and ecosystem without DEM director approval per the Rhode Island Dam Safety Act. And then they're utilizing these raised salinity levels as a means to justify their position that, hey, this is no longer a viable water source. Let's get rid of it. So it's like the audacity and the level of corruption between the Bristol County Water Authority and the DEM for a period of 12, 13, 14, 15 years, when they knew this problem of this dam. Okay, now the question is, why did they remove 2 feet from the dam? So I initially thought they couldn't be that audacious that they want to intentionally bring salt water in so they can use it as a excuse. No. Because when you look at the dam inspection back in 2006, okay, it specifically identifies and questions the critical integrity of that dam. And on the last page, it also recommends by PAR Engineering 2 options. 1, get rid of the dam. Number 2, lower the height of the dam to reduce the hydraulic load during periods of high water action, because the undermining foundation of that dam is not able to support any additional weight or hydraulic load. So by removing the dam 2 feet, you're reducing its profile, okay? So now as the water becomes salinified, and over a period of years of neglect, which the DEM should have been bringing the Bristol County Water Authority to the table to fix, but due to true Rhode Island corruption, and that's what it is, okay? What's good for me as a citizen, if I introduce by accident something into that environment, I got fines and penalties or imprisonment or both. But when you now have the DEM, who should be in charge of the stewards of the environment, looking the other way per an email, when the Bristol County Water Authority sent an email to the DEM, okay, on October 18th, 2019, Pam Marchand and Paul Guglielmo from the DEM, it identifies, okay, that, hey, FYI, I know that we just, and this is Bristol County Water Authority per their own right, to document what they just discussed and what they're planning to do, so they don't hold the ball when this day is coming. So it identifies that, hey, we're going to lower that dam by 2 feet as we discussed. Let me know if you got any issues or objections with that. There's no additional correspondence in the file. Per Rhode Island dam safety law and regulation, anytime there's an alteration, modification, or repair to a dam, you need director approval. You need DEM approval. And if it's an emergency repair, which this is not, this is a planned engineered recommendation per a report that PAR Engineering provided several years back. They have a certain amount of days to provide that in writing, determine the who, what, where, why, when, and how. Again, zero silence, radio silence from the DEM. They are covering their tracks because they know by lowering the dam by 2 feet, you've now altered the freshwater ecosystem and did not receive freshwater wetlands approval. So Am I a little bit emotional here? Yeah, I think so. And interesting enough, on your report and on the recommendations of the risks that we've identified, the water well issue, as well as many other tactical elements of our risk assessment, have not been addressed. They have intentionally misled the public on that February presentation in the town of Warren. How did they do that? Well, number one, when we asked if that dam was ever altered, modified, or repaired, okay? The director said, no, never. It stands as its original condition. Don't take my word for it.
Original design.
So then a gentleman from the Warren Town Council adds that, yeah, the fish ladder was designed. Interesting enough, okay, the fish ladder, that's not what we're talking about. They're trying to liquidate and diffuse the situation, okay? Because you can see here, if I may, just kind of, I just want to walk around and show you guys, okay? We have at least 3 or 4 photographs of dam repairs and alterations and modifications to the dam. Okay, all of them which are addressing structural integrity, critical structural integrity issues. Now, it would be an unwise decision for the Bristol County Water Authority to make such movements and actions and repairs on a structure like that, defying DEM regulation. But what it comes down to is the Bristol County Water Authority neglected the maintenance of the dams, intentionally and occluded the culvert at the northern dam dike, the gates and other elements at the critical south dam. That's what this is about. It's about the south dam. They've ignored, and they gave him a pass for over a dozen years. So now the risk, because they didn't do what they were supposed to do by Rhode Island law, is being passed to the community. Now, what are those risks? First one I want to talk about is fresh saltwater inundation to private wells. On that same presentation that I showed you, they said there are maybe 2 wells that would be impacted because they're on Serpentine Road. No, every single person on Serpentine Road is on a private well, not 2. So then the question then becomes, what is their methodology? Is it proximity to the embankment of the reservoir? So anyone who knows anything, and I know a little bit about fracking and aquifer, has nothing to do with proximity to an embankment of fresh water. Underneath, they run veins of rivers and fresh water. You cannot predict. You can have a hydraulic engineer in this room right now. They will not be able to predict what would get inundated and what will not. So the plan for Bristol County Water Authority to address that potential saltwater intrusion is what? We'll bring you water trucks. Well, all we requested, and we wanted to work with them on this. We just wanted a freshwater water main to Serpentine Road, which would satisfy 2 major risk elements. Number one, preventing ingestion and poisoning of our children, which 95% of the families on Serpentine Road have children of 5 years or less. And one currently pregnant. Okay? That's a problem. We don't want to know about a problem to the health of our children after the problem. We want to prevent it. We discussed this and told this to the town of Warren, and the Bristol County Water Authority. We completely always get sidelined and sidetracked on it. The other element is that water line would provide a fire response. Right now, the fire department utilizes the fresh water with pumps for fire suppression. I get it's not the best model, okay, but it's what it works. It gets them in front of every single property that they need to be because it goes along. We received opposition on that, and after several issues, okay, we've seen some activity for them to extend a hydrant about 20, 30 feet. But they ran a line to the existing water company building, and they didn't provide it down to Serpentine Road where it's needed. So that's the water issue. Now, the other issue is that's all agricultural farmland. All of it, most of it. My property, my farm, Windswept Farm, okay, and several others have culverts underneath Serpentine Road to the reservoir. They proposed not even doing anything with the culverts until I objected and told them they need to investigate this, which then they came back and said, yeah, we'll put one-way flap gates on these culverts to stop saltwater intrusion into our front land, which would then in turn turn it into marshland, which we cannot cultivate. And if we cannot cultivate it, it reduces our hay yield, and reducing our hay yield, okay, reduces our area usage for agricultural and potentially impacting our farm status. All of them which have downstream effects. So with the one-way check valve, right now, that part of the land, due to rain runoff, it's already flooded. The town of Warren has done an extremely poor job maintaining that area. It gets completely flooded. And that's with no flap gate. So my question is, what's the engineering regarding the hydraulic pressure associated with those flap gates to permit and not agitate the existing flooding issue that we have right now? Because if there's no floodgate and we're getting flooded, you put a steel flap gate or anything else there, it's going to compound the issue. So please don't take this in a negative way, okay? We've been trying to work with them. We just want the risks addressed appropriately. And there are additional risks, but in respect to the floor, I'm going to stop. But I also will state one other thing, and Mr. DeSisto, I mean this in all due respect, that there is an appearance within the community that in many people's personal opinion, that Mr. DeSisto's position as solicitor for the Coastal Resources Management and the town of Warren represents an appearance of conflict of interest.
What's the conflict of interest? What is it?
No, there are, well, the issue is that people have brought is the town of Warren should be looking out and representing the people in the community and the citizens, right? Ultimately, the health, the safety, and prosperity of its citizens. The DEM, their responsibility is the water, the critters, and the fish. And we've already demonstrated that they're not even fulfilling that obligation, and they're looking the other way. From a CRMC perspective, it's a threshold between the coast and the community. So if CRMC, which what has been brought to our knowledge, there have been many, or several, I should say, internal working meetings and discussions regarding this specific topic with leadership all involved, dating back for a couple of years now, including the DEM, including CRMC, including the town of Warren. And because of there have been published newspaper articles in the Warren Times Gazette and other publications that this has already been approved. And that question was brought up back in the February 2021 discussion. Multiple newspaper articles saying all this stuff has already been approved, as it means to culture the mindset of the population to accept the fact that Bristol County Water Authority, which is a non-PUC regulated entity, operates with impunity authorized by the governor. And any risks borne here today, any risks borne as the removal of these dams today, whatever decision is made, is ultimately going to be owned at the governor and state level. Thank you very much.
Any questions of Mr. Portello? Of the council? No.
You can ask, I don't know.
Right, I would ask anyone in our Zoom platform attending the meeting, if there's anyone that wishes to speak on this application. Let the record reflect, I'm not hearing anyone identify that they wish to.
If they can't, if you can't hear, maybe you can ask them to raise their hand on the platform. In the chat room, maybe.
Yeah, maybe they can chat.
You can ask them to post in the chat if they like. If they have the opportunity to read them.
That's just in an abundance of caution for anyone on our Zoom platform. As I indicated, no one has verbally indicated, but I don't want to miss it. If there's someone that wishes to identify their intent by way of chat and or raising their hand through the method allowed, kindly do so.
See.
On the side.
It'll be orange.
Okay. All right, seeing none, I will now go back to Attorney Keough.
Thank you. I don't want to get into a point-by-point refutation of Mr. Patello's comments, but there's a couple of things I'd like to address. And the first is any intimation that the Bristol County Water Authority does not take into consideration the public effect and has not taken into consideration the public effect is absolutely untrue. As the staff noted and is in the staff report, the Bristol County Water Authority has held multiple public information sessions, including with Mr. Patello's organization or with his folks at the Waterview Condominium Association. Mr. Patello has been to the Bristol County Water Authority meeting to raise the same concerns he raised tonight. At one point, he had an attorney who sent me approximately a 6-page letter raising the same points he raised tonight. I responded to that letter with an 8-page response. My response, however, was based on the science and the facts that are germane to this application. And that's what we're here for tonight. We're here to decide, it's somewhat narrow. That's whether or not the Bristol County Water Authority has backed up its application. And it has. And I didn't hear any comments or any expert testimony refuting any of the scientific evidence submitted by the Bristol County Water Authority. I appreciate Mr. Patello's right to give his views, but frankly, they're not evidence. And I think it's also, it's not fair to make accusations as he has about DEM and people doing things illegally and immorally. We don't even have DEM here. If he wants to raise those issues with DEM, where DEM can respond to those, he has the right to do so. As we've noted tonight, there's another proceeding before DEM. So those accusations should be leveled at DEM when they have a chance to respond to those accusations. I think it's very unfair to do that in this forum. there also seemed to be an intimation that the form letters were somehow gathered because there wasn't enough notice about these proceedings. And I would point out to the council, if you look in the file, those form letters were received on October 19th, 2021. They've been in the file for quite some time. There's nothing in the file and nothing presented here tonight that counters the factual and scientific evidence that supports this application. Also raised a point, and I think it sort of goes to the overall tone of the comments, when he raised that there was a potential conflict, could not name the conflict, but then said that the town of Warren should be looking out for its citizens. The intimation being, if the town of Warren does not agree with Mr. Botello, they're somehow not looking out for their citizens. And that's not true. We have one objector here tonight. After all this public outreach, public comment, we have one objector. And as I noted before, multiple supporters of this program and this application, including Save the Bay, who's here tonight. So the issue before this council, as you well know, is did the BCWA satisfy the requirements of the application? And the evidence before the council is they have. But I do want the council to know that we took very seriously from the beginning the public outreach that had to go along with this program. And we've done it, and we have support from a broad spectrum of the community. And simply because this broad spectrum supports this application does not mean that they're not looking out for the interests of the citizens of Warren. In fact, quite the opposite. They would not be supporting this application if it wasn't in the public's best interest, which is another standard before this council tonight. We have any questions you have. We have, as I indicated, we have Mr. Kutu here. We have the folks from PAR who can talk about the evidence and the scientific submissions supporting this application. So if there's any questions on those, we're happy to answer them.
Mr. Keo.
Yes.
Would the Bristol County Water Authority consider running the water line that the objector referenced?
Well, it's funny that that's what it came to, because that to me is really what, it's not about the application. It's not about the application. And I wasn't going to bring it up, but frankly, I think that Mr. Botello sort of revealed what his ultimate aim is, and that's to have a water line run down Serpentine Avenue. The Bristol County Water Authority does not have pipes throughout its entire distribution system. And they would have to look at the cost of bringing that down. But any of the other actual objections or objections to this application and the running of a pipe down Serpentine Avenue is, I would submit, is not necessarily before the council.
So I know it's not before the council. I asked you a question.
Yes,
Or no?
they would have to look at the cost, and if the cost is prohibitive, no. I'll be very frank about that.
So what cost is it based on a child's life?
Well, again,
What's the cost?
again, this is why I hate to get into, because now there's an intimation that there's some evidence that there's risk to children's
More
lives.
testing been done. My house has not.
Sure. Kindly keep your comments.
Sorry.
There's no evidence.
I mean, I didn't say that.
No, and I'm just saying from my point of view, it would be a cost analysis, and if it's prohibitive, then no.
So cost environment.
But but that's, I think, a false equivalency. I think what we're saying is running a pipe down Serpentine Road would have no impact on the environment and does not change the scope of what's before the council tonight. It's a simple matter of, has the Bristol County Water Authority met the application requirements? And
It's not that simple.
I think that to draw that conclusion that running a pipe down Serpentine Road would somehow change this, the dam will still be removed. And so there's no evidence in the record that the lack of a pipe down Serpentine Road causes any environmental damage whatsoever.
But the drinking water can be adversely affected.
There's nothing in the record that says that drinking water is going to be affected. And again, you can, if you want to ask, the witnesses.
Would Bristol County be willing to provide some compensation to engage an expert to verify that the water quality is indeed not going to be contaminated?
We have engaged experts. We've also agreed, to your point, we've also agreed to do well testing. Once this project is up and running, we've agreed to do well testing. The folks from PAR can talk about that. Absolutely.
Well, testing pre and post.
Yes, yes.
Yes, the
And when you say,
Mr.
the plan that.
You need your name
I'm sorry, Matthew Belisle.
He got sworn in, yeah.
The plan that we've been speaking with Bristol County Water Authority includes about 90 days prior to the start of construction. The residents will be contacted so they can coordinate and arrange for an appointment to have their water tested and sampled at their tap. It would be sent to a third-party laboratory so that we can get unbiased results. And then after the project was completed, any abutter that wanted to have their water tested afterward could contact the Bristol County Water Authority to have their water tested. If it was found to have a salinity content greater than initially, then there would be discussions as to what could be done to improve that.
how many wells?
Based upon our findings from the DEM records, which are very incomplete, they only listed 2. We acknowledged that every house along Serpentine would likely have a well, at least one. But the records at Rhode Island DEM were incomplete, so the notice would be going to every resident along Serpentine Road.
So every resident, whether they have a well or not, would be noticed, and then it'd be up to them to
Schedule the time.
schedule the time.
At our cost, obviously.
May I ask Ms. Silva, are you comfortable with that?
Yes, in fact, the monitoring of the wells is in our staff report. And Ross Singer, the reviewing engineer, and I wrestled with whether or not we were going to reiterate it as a stipulation. But because that's not a red book regulation, we did not include it as a specific stipulation. We could, if the council would like us to, but we did acknowledge that they have agreed to monitoring in our staff reports.
That could absolutely be a stipulation. We have no problem with that.
I would just like to comment on that because I'm also living in the area that I live in, even with the climate change, saltwater intrusion is definitely becoming a problem. So I would definitely want to see that as a stipulation prior to, afterwards, and periodically. And if, the data shows, again, getting back to some scientific data, if the data shows intrusion, then it would be up to Bristol, to county to take care of that. And however, we write that in as a stipulation, but I would not vote to approve this without that in it. So just from my point.
And again, that was planned without.
I understand.
Without even a stipulation.
But I want to, codify it.
Yep.
In what we do, and I want it to be, out into the future, because once this thing is up and running, North Dam gets removed, things start changing, and I know climate change is coming along too. But, and we can set a time frame. But
Yeah, that would be my only, yeah.
And we'd need to figure out what that is, whether it's a year after the North is taken care of so that things have stabilized. So maybe that's a point of discussion on what that would be, but and then I would rely on staff to maybe decide what the time frame would be on testing after.
Yeah.
It would be, to me, it would be after the North Dam. When the total project is complete, and a time frame after that would.
Yeah, that's.
You agree?
I agree. So we have a balance. I mean, it appears that the applicant has met the burdens in the red book. The criteria for a special exception. Think about every agency you can think about. Submitted a letter of approval, saying the Bay has approved it, but at the same time, I think we owe the objector some protection. So, vetting it, I think maybe the well test with Ms. Silva, overseeing the monitoring of that is the balance, but I just hate to see another one of these in courts. I mean, clearly it's met right in the red book. So now it's gonna be end up in court, it's just right, come back to us. So I think if we can construct something that protects the integrity of the wells, I want to call it a win-win, but I think I would be satisfied.
Protection of the water source to the families or the.
Yeah, and again, that was planned without the stipulation, but we're happy to have that as a stipulation. And again, I go back to,
It needs to be.
Yeah.
In the document. And then we just need to know the limits, whatever they might be, but I think that whole area has to stabilize, and then you have to give a time frame, which might be a year. You'd be better at that than I am, but.
So,
Yeah,
Mr. Sisto, I don't want to cut off any of the other council members, but at some point, could you suggest language for a potential motion that would include very, strict well sampling?
Correct. What the language would be, and it'd be embodied in the decision, would be that well monitoring continue for whatever time period you feel is appropriate. After the, not only during, but after the construction, after the demolition of the dam. And just specify what the testing protocol will be. You can definitely come up with that language.
Excuse me, sir, may I add one constructive criticism? This is great dialogue.
Stop 1 second. Stop 1 sec. Because I was going to you, but I just want to get on the record this way.
Yeah.
Mr. Botello has had his hand up. Do you have a question relative to what's being discussed right now?
I do.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much for this dialogue. This is exactly what we want to hear. But I think the notion of just well testing is one aspect of the risk mitigation plan. That's detection, right? So risk mitigation is about reducing risk, right? So it's great to know that you have a problem, but the overall plan is not to live with the problem, it's to remediate the problem. So that's why if a problem is detected at one of the wells, whether it's 1 year or 10 years, okay? The recourse and mitigation solution for that is an alternate freshwater supply source. The only way that is feasible is via a water main. The water main unto itself, with implementing this dam removal without a water main, if there is ingestion identified, if there are contaminants in the water, the entire community is going to be dependent on what contingency plan? Water trucks supplied by the Bristol County Water Authority to our house? Are they going to drill a new well? That's not going to solve it because you're going to be tapping into the same aquifer. So this discussion is not just about well testing. It's about preventing negative health implications on our children. Not just that we may have a problem and we want to know what the number says. Thank you.
I think, just we're discussing a little bit, as Jerry had indicated. I think that's speculative. I think that would be the subject of a different forum. I think the protection, we're doing a balancing here, if you will. Given some protection that we don't need to, but in due diligence, I think we should, as it's been expressed by the council, that we afford that testing. So I just wanted to say. Of course. Okay. Okay. All right. But I do think, as asked, we can make part of the recommendation that you do a cost study or a feasibility study on the cost of doing it, so that the number's out there. Not saying you have to do it, do the line at this point, but I think it doesn't hurt to do a cost study.
Do
of Serpentine Road.
Cost, but it doesn't cost.
That's not gonna cost a lot of money.
Okay. And I just want to say, state for the record, I think we are getting far afield of the council's jurisdiction, but Mr. Kutu indicates that he can.
We table this application, want to make sure we're in our jurisdiction.
Well, if I could finish, Mr. Kutu has indicated he's willing, we can do a feasibility study.
Okay.
I think Ms. Hall had a question. You had your hand up.
Yeah, it's relative to the council's jurisdiction, and I'm just, as it's evolving, and I know there's not a motion on the table, but it's sounding like we're getting involved in water sampling and mandating that our staff oversee that, and that there be parameters and numbers, and I'm not aware that the Rhode Island general laws or regulations afford that type of jurisdiction over the council. And so my question for Attorney DeSisto is, in fact, does the council have jurisdiction to mandate that type of oversight of future well testing by the staff of coastal resource management?
Yeah, I don't view this as spring from CRMC statutory authority. Rather, the way that I look at this is that it is part of what it does under the Red Book and its regulations. And for these types of special exceptions, conditions are appropriate. And in this instance, these conditions that are being placed on are appropriate for the work that is to be done. It's something that in the first instance, the applicant has agreed to anyway. And in the second instance, they reluctantly agreed, but they agreed to do that feasibility study for the Serpentine Road. So I do think it's appropriate based upon the council's ability to grant special exceptions.
With conditions.
With conditions.
Well, the regulation stipulates 6 different types of conditions under the Red Book.
Correct,
But I'm
yes.
just curious about the oversight and the involvement of staff and continual monitoring and oversight. And I'm not sure that that's included in those 6 conditions.
Amy?
This staff stipulation on page P9 actually says that the applicant is responsible for hiring an environmental consultant. So
That's not what I'm hearing in the.
Right,
I 100% agree.
the way it typically works when we require monitoring for any type of CRMC asset is the burden is on the applicant,
as it should be,
to do the legwork, to hire the professional, to send the reports to us, demonstrating that the project is proceeding according to plan, identifying any particular problems, and then we work on remedies. So I think they're parsing the particulars of by general stipulation of an environmental consultant needs to be on board to monitor.
Yeah, and I hope that I adequately explain the matter. Amy's correct. But staff's gonna have to keep an eye on what they do. And if it's an enforcement issue, if it's not done, then CRMC does have jurisdiction.
Absolutely, and the burden's on the applicant.
Yeah, I did not
I'm
mean,
sure the conversation was heading towards that
No.
not being the case, which I think is inappropriate.
yeah, I did not mean to give the impression that Amy be going out there doing the samples herself. However, there has to be some oversight to make sure that it's done.
Again, the way it was first phrased, that the monitoring continue for a period of, for an appropriate period after the project is complete, is fine, and we may be able to work with staff what that is. I just don't want this to be a perpetual requirement, and I didn't hear that, but I did hear comments from Tello that it would be 1 year, 10 years, 25,
That's not what we asked for.
and I just want to raise up the record. It's not what I heard from the council, but I'm very comfortable.
I wanted that verbiage in there.
Yep.
Want my support. There's, I have one other comment, if it's okay. The reason that we wouldn't have to go for, a water main running down the road is because results of those tests may apply to 1 well, 2 wells, no wells, an increase, right, from a baseline. And there are other methods that if it's one well, there are other methods that could be brought to bear to solve that particular person's problem, which probably would result in the drilling of a deep well and what do you call jazz seals to hold out the saltwater intrusion that hopefully would be above where you'd get to good artesian water, if you would, down into the rock, into the, you know, the ledge, not ledge, but solid rock, granite, whatever it may be. So there will be multiple solutions based on the data you get back, and it doesn't drive to, you know, let's get the town to spend a lot of money for a water main that you probably will not need. So it's just a way to monitor and assess if there's a problem. And at some point in time, it becomes up to the individual landowner to get a water test once in a while. If they feel, I mean, we do it all, anybody that's lived off well water, you periodically get a water test, period. It's part of living in that environment, so.
Yeah, and I think we want to make sure too that it's based on some.
So you gotta have
science,
technical
facts, yeah.
and it's not a broad brush solution. There are several solutions.
Great,
Just the point.
thank you.
All right. Yes, Ms. Reynolds.
I do think it's an interesting point that Mr. Patello raises, that testing probably isn't just enough, but you have already considered testing as one of your sort of toolkit. What were your plans for mitigation to go along with that if you do get negative results?
Well, I think to the point just raised, we'd have to see what the result is that comes back. And that's why we want it to be based on testing so that we can identify what the problem is and then figure out how to mitigate that problem. It's speculative right now. And that's why it's difficult to say, we'll just run a pipe, because that may not be the way to solve the problem. So we'd have to see it based on the testing we get back.
Anything else, Attorney Keo?
That's it.
All right.
Did you have a motion?
No, I think I want to say something. I was thinking about it.
Attorney DeSisto wants to address something.
Yeah, just before you get, I think it's about ready to vote, but I do want to say one thing. Mr. Patello intimated that I have a conflict of interest. The reason I asked him what the conflict was is because I already know the answer. There is no conflict here. Here's why. I am the solicitor for the town of Warren. There was a presentation in the town of Warren that was pretty similar to this one. The question was, what, if any, jurisdiction does the town of Warren have over this matter? The answer was none. So, there is no conflict. I'm sorry that things like that have to be said at these meetings, but I think it's important particularly for professionals to just, I represent you. I want you to know that there is no conflict, and that was an unfortunate statement. Thank you.
Thank you.
For the record, it's just an appearance of conflict of interest. That's all. Just an appearance. That's all.
And see, the problem is you say something like that, and then that's what gets into the article. You take the shot and that's it. That's a cheap shot. And that's why I have to answer.
I'm sorry.
There is no conflict.
I'm not saying there is.
Hold on.
I agree.
You're talking about what I do as a profession. That's why I have to defend myself from cheap shots like that. So
I'm sorry.
I understand you're emotional.
Malice intended.
I understand you're emotional, but that's unfair. And I have to say that because I have clients here that are wondering if in fact I have a conflict, which I don't.
I thank you. Any further questions from staff and from the council for staff? Is the council ready for a motion on this matter? Mr. Gomez.
I will move based on our discussions and finding a fact. I will move that this what do I call it? Application be approved, and with the stipulation relative to the testing of the water, periodic testing of the water quality as as you deem appropriate, Amy.
Is it based upon the findings of fact set forth in the,
It is. I based it on the discussions and in the staff report, the findings of fact.
The motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Izzy. So a motion has been made by Mr. Gomez, seconded by Mr. Izzy. Is there any discussion? Ms. Hall?
I would just like to add that the staff, all of the staff stipulations recommended be adopted.
that part of your motion?
That would be part of the motion. I guess I just implied that, but I added one to the stipulations that existed. Thank you.
And Mr. Izzy, do you reiterate your second?
I do.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yeah. Mr.
So
Goodwin?
will they also be doing a cost analysis as well, or do we have to stipulate that?
It should be included. Is it?
Then we would also stipulate the cost analysis be done.
All right, so that's been added to the motion. Mr. Izzy, do you reiterate your second?
Yes.
Okay, so motion has been made and seconded with the stipulations specifically enumerated and those incorporated. We'll now hold the council. Mr. Izzy.
Aye.
Paul.
Aye.
Ms. Reynolds.
Aye.
Mr. Sahajian. Ms. McGovern.
Aye.
Mr. Gomez.
Aye.
I too, Raymond Coy, vote aye.
Motion to adjourn.
Good. All right, then motion to adjourn, you know, say aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Oh, my God.
That was a